is your WESN News on the Hour. I'm Naomi Macnish. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Deadly end to police shootout after stolen car chase. Tobago children using marijuana edibles, says THA official. Princestown residents demand reopening of fire station and calls for overhaul of ODPM after slow emergency responses. Now for the details. 2 of 3 suspects who were involved in a shootout with police on May 26th are now dead. The men were seen in a car stolen from a TT rideshare driver who was robbed the night before in Pitti Valley. Police spotted the stolen vehicle in Trin City around 1:15 a.m. After a high-speed chase, the suspects abandoned the car in Dabity. All 3 were later found with gunshot wounds. 1 died at the scene and another passed away later that day. Police have not yet released their identities. A top health official in Tobago is raising alarm over rising drug use among young children. Director of Social Protection Dr. Hanif Benjamin says children under 10 are consuming edible marijuana. He made the remarks during a 2-day drug prevention training for preschool educators on May 21st and 22nd. This session, held by the Alcohol and Drug Abuse Prevention Program, aims to help teachers implement age-appropriate drug education. Dr. Benjamin stressed the need for insight before action and said Tobago is facing a negative first in early-age drug exposure. There are renewed calls to reopen the Princestown fire station after a May 18 blaze destroyed part of a home in Buen Intento. It reportedly took fire officers from Monterey Post 45 minutes to arrive. Time residents say could have been cut to 5 minutes if the local station had been operational. The station was listed for reconstruction since July, along with those in Siparia and Rio Claro. Line Minister Roger Alexander says a temporary site is being considered to get officers back in service, though no timeline has been given. MP Dr. Rashad Sicharan Ali says the trauma of recent fires highlights the urgency for a solution. Public Utilities Minister Barry Padarath is pushing for better disaster response systems, citing delays by the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Management. Speaking after the National Climate Outlook Forum on May 21st, Padarath said the ODPM lacks capacity and coordination. He plans to meet with the Line Minister Roger Alexander to explore legislative fixes and improve staffing. Rural Development Minister Khadija Amin also raised concerns about under-resourced disaster units at regional corporations, calling for urgent investment in staff, equipment and infrastructure without waiting for new laws. Well, that's news to the hour on WESN. I'm Naomi Macnish. Thanks for watching.
WESN.
Transportation issues, arguably, is affecting more than we realize. Part of the whole Debe campus debate and where our tertiary education facilities should be located, part of it, I won't say all of it, comes down to transportation. Among other things, emergency response comes down to free lanes of traffic. Yes, you can have as much sirens as you want. Doesn't mean that you're going to be able to get through the traffic in a timely manner. Our productivity, our mental stability, dare I say. We just had, on Monday, the TTPS media ambassador speaking about road safety in the wet season, but also at times, whenever these topics comes up, it's also about the stress of being a driver. Off air, ASP Arun lamented that same day he himself, I think, or sometime very frequently had to deal with bad drives on like a couple of incidents in one day. And part of that is because the stress of the road and the overcongestion of the road, in my opinion. And adding more lanes, while there are certain examples where to some extent there are benefits to adding more road, generally speaking, that's a losing proposition because more and more citizens are looking to private vehicles than any sort of public transportation. And we have bottlenecks where no matter what we do, there will be no more new road, unless we had unlimited money. If we had unlimited money, yes, we could increase the road going towards the west, going towards Chagaramas. We could add more lanes. We could reclaim land in the sea and knock down buildings or cut into the mountain if we had unlimited money. But we don't. But that's its own unique problem. We have the wider issue with regards to national transportation. Now, the Route 2 Maxi Taxi Association, they were looking at an Inter-American Development Bank recommendation for an island-wide bus route network, which is something I personally believe in. Any sorts of proposals like this were shelved for the rapid rail, which never came to be, never even came close to being. And quite frankly, I don't think we have the capital for. Because if you think we can't maintain buses, why do you think we could maintain railway, trains, and tracks? And if a bus goes down, all right, a bus goes down. If a train goes down, particularly where it goes down, could impact a significant amount of any rail network we put down, because it's not as though we're going to have a honeycomb of railway lines. If it's rail, we're probably going to have 2. Now, potentially, there's some potential with the thought of maybe using rail, if someday we could afford it, going west and going in certain parts where there are bottlenecks. But when we have a priority bus route, I don't know, if we did something to ensure that it was only for buses, you know what I mean? Now, of course, part of this came up with regards to the controversy, quote-unquote controversy, around the allocation of priority bus route passes to private individuals from the previous administration, a practice which is more common than you think. And if I remember clearly enough, I don't think the Prime Minister directly spoke to how passes would be allocated under her administration. She mainly spoke about the irresponsibility of the previous administration. Now, it was irresponsible, at the very least, if you're not having records of it, if you're not doing it properly. Of course, that then suggests you're taking advantage of the system and you're giving passes to people who should not get passes. But my point is, the Prime Minister herself did not necessarily say anything in the affirmative to say that some form or fashion of that practice will not happen under her administration. Because at the end of the day, they will make the arguments that certain people need passes, so we have to give them passes. And then all of a sudden, somewhere along the line, somebody will slip in. And then you're under the radar. And that's how you undermine the one dedicated artery for mass transit that we have that doesn't even go north-south. One of the things that Mr. San Fernando told me yesterday with regards to the discussion on the DB campus was there's a bus service going from San Fernando to St. Augustine, and it seems mainly to be a one-sided bus service. I don't know if you could come back on the return trips as students, but generally speaking, the flow is to go north in the morning and south in the evening. And we'll probably get into this later on with the good lady because she wants to touch on this topic. She has her own perspective as someone that has been to that educational process in the region and has taught in that educational facility in the region, or at least, I'm not sure if it's the Hugh Winning Law School or the Faculty of Law. But if there was a dedicated bus lane, bus route to go north-south, then I'll be like, whoo, yeah, it isn't much of a problem, but there isn't, so I do have to wonder to what extent traffic is still going to impact that. At least to some degree, right? It is better now, to some degree. Hopefully the road expansion holds up. It's finished and holds up. We have to wait and see about that. When you try to time things for an election, you potentially compromise construction. Potentially, we don't know for sure. But back to the main topic at hand. There are a lot of issues that potentially could be solved if it's easier to get around the country. And I fully endorse an expanded bus service. Two things would have to happen. One, potentially dedicated bus lanes or bus routes would have to be either segmented off or built. Bigger buses to take advantage of dedicated lanes or routes in order to move more people. More buses, and all of this opens up jobs. You could drive a maxi, yeah, maybe you could drive a bus. Yes, of course there'll be people who own maxis and stuff like that will complain. And we've spoken about, Ashraf and I spoke about potentially what could be done for the taxi drivers and the maxi drivers. And there will always be certain routes where the big buses can't get to because the roads are just not appropriate. And people are not necessarily thinking big picture here. Quick turnover means you can move more traffic, means potentially you can make more money, potentially, depending on how professional the service and reliable the service is. Now, the Route 2 Maxi Association, they want a dedicated corridor from Chaguanas to Port of Spain. I would say something going from south to north, right? With access along the way, of course. Where do you put it? Ashraf was saying you could take the third inner lane, potentially, of the highway, or maybe the outer. I'm not sure which, I guess one of the lanes. That's not as, that might not be what I would like to see, but that might be the practical compromise of what we can do. Cutting a bus route near to the north-south highway, that's probably impractical with the construction along both sides of the highway. So then could you do it to the west or the east of the highway? And when I say to the west or the east, I mean on the outside of whatever development or building. Maybe it has to be winding, I don't know, right? Maybe you put it further inland. And then maybe you just allow some taxis to run a circular pattern. And that's just the beginning. With regards to Tobago, Tobago's going to have its own traffic problems, and I'm not too sure exactly how they're going to solve that per se. Although there is a big difference between single lane and dual lane. And to what extent Tobago could do that with their highway, which I would not classify as a highway, for multiple reasons. It might be necessary. They potentially do have the space to do it from a lot of the, well, from lowlands to Scarborough. Beyond that, beyond Scarborough, yes, and then as you get further north, then it gets iffy as you get into the mountains. You're not really on the highway anymore. It's not really a highway anyway. But this is something that I don't know if the current administration will look to get into it, because it's not necessarily going to be cheap. It's not necessarily going to be as expensive as rapid rail. And potentially, if you're going to cut a north-south bus route, which I personally would prefer, but that would take a lot of thought, a lot more thought than I have time for this morning to look into. That's not going to be cheap either, and I don't know if we could afford it right now. But the flip side is potentially, if it only costs $800 million, $1 billion, it might actually save, I think it was something like $2 billion in GDP. Not $2 billion in government revenue, but the higher GDP is, the faster growth will be, potentially, and the faster you could realize higher tax revenue. But also, I think this is one of the things that it touches on so many things, and part of it is the mental well-being of our population and the perception that things are running smoothly. Because New York is a congested city, and dare I say it, moving around in New York at more often than not, felt smoother than moving around in TNT. Whether you take the rare and expensive taxi or you utilize the subway, it just felt smoother. Half the time you walk in, but for whatever reason, it doesn't bother you because it's practical. Oh, there's also some benefits of a public transportation system where you walk in between the intervals as opposed to drive everywhere. It impacts public health as well. All right, a couple other things to get into. One, there was a shooting case from 2002 that collapsed. The judgment implies potential, and the key word here is potential, funny business, for lack of a better way to put it, with regards to officer testimony. One of the officers includes the current Minister of Homeland Security, newly minted Minister of Homeland Security, newly minted anti-crime top boss. A shooting incident where the judge is basically saying, looking at this is a quote, looking at the evidence as a whole, I am not sure the accused shot at anyone. I am not sure he was in possession of a firearm or ammunition. This is because, and this is what I find interesting, apparently there were discrepancies in the officers' testimonies, but there were also signs that they were corroborating their story or collusion. So I don't know how that works, that you have their testimonies having inconsistencies when compared against each other, but then also there are signs where they're trying to get a manufactured story straight. They didn't necessarily say, I don't know, I haven't read all of the reports on this story, but I don't think they necessarily revealed in the reporting the details of the various testimony. But the judge, well, the defendant's attorney highlighted serious discrepancies in the officer's testimonies, procedural failings, apparent mishandling of evidence, lack of any immediate crime scene processing, absence of police station diary entry, signs of possible collusion in the officer's written statements, inconsistencies in the chain of custody for the gun and spent shell casings. Some of those things might not have been under the arresting officer's control or the officers of the incident, because again, it's a shooting incident. They claim they were shot at and they returned fire, and I believe they hit the defendant in the buttocks. Then they tried to get him to set up somebody else, another individual, who it's a moot point on a technical level because that person was never arrested for that incident, but ended up dying a few years later. This is my only problem, and this is the key part. The key part is not all the things the defense said, and it's not the things that the judge said. The key part is this is a 2002 shooting case, and we're in 2025. If this was like the fourth appeal to the murder of the century, fine, 23 years, okay. If this was the biggest corruption scandal that TNT has ever seen, maybe, right? Maybe, you know? Like, we're talking about the Twin Towers cost twice as much as it was supposed to, and someone pocketed that money. All right, fine, whatever. Or some massive pedophile ring that goes north-south of the country and there's a list of victims a mile long. We're talking about a shooting incident in 2002. I don't even think anybody died in this shooting incident. Why did it have to take so long? And part of my issue is, at one point, is a whole host of errors going to happen just because, one, yes, we have accountability issues in TTPS, but two, it's 23 years. So if we already have issues with the TTPS being professional, and professional touches on a lot of things, not just how they interact with public, but how they approach their job. Could you imagine what could go wrong in 23 years? Then on top of that, there's the fact that human memory ain't always the best. Just the other day, somebody in the office swore he was at an event that we know he wasn't at. And we told him about it. But he swore he was there because he remembered it. Clear as day. Human brain is a funny thing. It can make you think you were there when you weren't. And that's my issue. So I don't necessarily know if this was good cops gone bad or just cops maybe being bad at their job. Remember, this is 25 years ago, so it's not like this is senior superintendent Roger Alexander involved in this incident. This is, I don't know what his rank would have been in 2002, 23 years ago, right? This could be sloppiness. This could be just, to some degree, the natural progression of time. I don't know. So I don't know necessarily to judge this, because it started to go wrong when it took 23 years for a matter like this to reach, well, trial and conclusion. I don't know why did it take so long. At what point is eyewitness testimony going to be compromised just because? And I think that's why certain things have a statute of limitations in other jurisdictions. All right, last thing quick. Well, I do want to hit one story in the other review today, but first, there are reportedly, this I believe is coming from the Minister of Defense, 3 of the deportees coming in from the US were sex offenders, 2 were pedophiles, and now there is questions with regards to how to put those issues, how to put them on the sex offenders database, right? And I think part of the problem is existing legislation in its current form does not spell out just how the issue of deportees should be addressed. And this is just one more area. I just bring this up to highlight the fact that this is just one more area where we have laws that need to be looked into and updated. And I get it, AI is scary, but we have some real basic low-hanging fruit where we don't have to try to think and anticipate the future and come up with new stuff. We have some low-hanging fruit or some stuff that we just need right now that should be, if not self-evident what the fix should be, we could look at jurisdictions for perfectly working examples to point us almost to the exact direction we need to go. We don't need to, AI, that's a whole host of looking into it and what do we need and what do we anticipate and trying to plan for the future and trying to anticipate what the challenges could be. Some of these things like legislation to deal with deportees, legislation to deal with deportees that are sex offenders and pedophiles. This should not be that hard, right? Because one would think the whole point of a sex offender registry, particularly in the case of anything to do with children, is that that's why you have it there, so the public could be aware. And if they're not on it, I understand it was not in this jurisdiction, but still, that kind of technicality, I don't know if I like that. If they claim that they're innocent, I hate to say this, but this is not the place to debate the merits of their individual cases. It is what it is. All right, let's just go quick with today's daily review. Now, there's just one thing I wanted to highlight before we go into, before we take the break, and that is with regards to the prison service current situation of having dual responsibilities or reporting, lines of reporting to both the Ministry of Homeland Security and the Ministry of Justice. The various arms or work, jobs, roles of the prison service has been split. Right now, I believe Homeland Security, Minister Alexander, has the prison service, reform, community service, rehabilitation and parole, and prisoner management, whereas Justice is looking at probation services, offender management, reform and transformation. One of the things that I wanted to highlight about this is the fact that to some extent, this is kind of natural. Justice has certain prerogatives, so it makes sense that they will oversee certain aspects of inmates or the prison side of the criminal justice system, certain aspects of it that deals with, to some extent, the courts and what happens through the courts, by the courts, like probation services, right? And then, of course, offender management, reform and transformation, so the rehabilitation services, potentially some of that would have been, post-release. Some of it could be pre-release too. But all of that would go into then how a judge treats individual inmates. And to some extent, I'm saying this a lot, to some extent they should have a direct hand on that. Whereas a lot of the hard and fast enforcement, prison service, right, prisoner management under Homeland Security, there does seem to be a bit of an overlap here. So I assume rehabilitation might be pre-release, whereas the offender management, reform and translation might be post-release. So it could be with regards to, I'm not entirely sure exactly how they're delineating that. The thing is, it all comes back down to the working relationships of these ministries. And at the end of the day, you were going to get some amount of, dare I say, lost in translation potential risks when you have a ministry, prison service, police service, etc., etc. Part of the issue with our national security apparatus is the working relationships between the various institutions. And splitting the ministry to some extent does make new challenges because two separate ministries, but I'm not entirely sure if they'll be located in the same building or not, because justice is technically doing a whole set of different things. But we should not necessarily look to this and think of it as a negative per se, because at the end of the day, the judiciary, the judicial arm of the criminal justice system and everything linked to it would still have to be working with the prison service. So where the lines of communications are, it's more like they're shifted rather than a new divergence was created. So will this work? To some extent, it has to work. It's already was going to be multiple different interests, multiple different perspectives, multiple different organizations having to come together to make this whole thing work anyway. So this is not anything extra, right? It's just that my one concern is not so much the challenge of it, just having to go through any kind of change. Because if it doesn't stick, it's not so simple to change back or to try to apply a fix. This is one of the issues with the education system. The education system, at least from the perspective of one teacher that I spoke to pre-COVID, the syllabus was going through so many changes, it added more work to the teachers and more stress to the students taking up the SCA exam. And any organization that goes through too many changes, and you're not necessarily forced to do it for practical reasons, but you're doing it. And if it doesn't work, what happens? If you're a sports fan, you know what it's like when your team makes changes and they don't work, and you make another change and it doesn't work, and you make another change, and now you're just chasing, trying to get back to an average level of service that is stable. We already have issues in our protective services where we have some fundamental breakdowns. And now we have to go through exercises of trying to get all the stakeholders on the same page, but with different reporting structures. And there's nothing wrong with that, but to some extent, we have to commit it. And this is to some extent a criticism of how our politics goes, because yes, as long as this government is re-elected, we're going to get consistency. But all the changes, well, not all, but a significant amount of the changes that the partnership did and projects the partnership had was discontinued. And then the PNM did their own thing. They renamed, they reorganized, they restructured, only to come now with the UNC, bringing back things that they had 10 years ago under the partnership and causing changes to happen again. Is that the most efficient way when we have a crime problem? Are we going to get practical dividends from this triple set of ministers, whereas before we used to have one? Hopefully we do. The prevailing wisdom is that we should. But we'll have to wait and see. Right now, it seems okay. But this is just one of those things where hindsight is 20/20. And we'll know more in the future. But until then, hopefully, with 3 ministers, the various protective services could get more attention, could get more oversight, could get more accountability, and improve their situations. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll welcome the good lady. Stay tuned.
Low energy? Heart concerns? Migraines slowing you down? It's time to take control of your health. Join Wellness Unlocked, the series that brings expert advice and real solutions for a healthier you. In our latest episode, learn how Jameson CoQ10 can help support heart health, boost energy, and even reduce migraines. Get the science, the stories, and the steps to power up your health with CoQ10. Don't miss Wellness Unlocked. Watch now on WESN and start your wellness journey today.
When it comes to Pira and Laddu, I just use Chatak's Laddu and Pira Mithai Mix. It's a combination of traditional ingredients in one pack. I don't spend all that time preparing different ingredients like Ma. 3/4 of the work is done. So now I can make fresh, delicious Pira and Laddu in about 15 minutes with the convenience of Chatak's Laddu and Pira Mithai Mix. Now Ma's Kitchen is a Chatak kitchen. Now available Gulab Jamun Instant Mithai Mix.
The Little Store offers you a great shopping experience in cool comfort with knowledgeable, helpful staff. Our large aisles and well-organized shelves are filled with quality puja materials, incense sticks, tasty mithai, and homemade yogurt. Come to us for all your Indian groceries and spices, SAS paper sahari leaves, household items, sewing supplies, religious books, and lots more. You can depend on The Little Store, your store. It's an honor to serve you.
Her voice has mesmerized us for years.
And now, in a rare treat for music fans,
Shakuntala and Friends in concert, featuring Shakuntala Jangbahadur. Singing sensation Deval Chaiklal, brilliant musician Dr. Shivanan Maharaj, master flautist and saxophonist Narendra Maharaj, with music from Shiv Sangeet Orchestra, Shakuntala and Friends in concert.
Shakuntala.
Struggling with heart health or frequent migraines? Discover the simple steps to reclaim your energy and vitality.
We're diving into a topic that affects about 422 million people around the world. Diabetes.
Tune into Wellness Unlocked, the series that delivers expert advice, practical tips, and inspiring stories to help you take control of your health and well-being. Your health matters. Don't miss Wellness Unlocked. Watch now on WESN and take the first step toward better health.
Maybe he landed here totally by coincidence. But if by chance he's admiring your fresh coat of Benjamin Moore soft sky blue, well, that's a pretty high compliment. Coming from an expert.
Our award-winning show is back, and this season promises to be even more exciting than before. What's Up, Doc isn't just a title, it's a call to action for anyone who wants to improve their health and well-being. Join us on this thrilling ride towards better health on WESN Content Capital.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
Well, you've had to be hiding under a rock, and even then, you probably would be accessing your phone. And you may have seen the Prime Minister be very upset over something that, to most of the population, doesn't seem to be that big of a deal. And at least with what was reported, I myself, now I acknowledge the fact that the Prime Minister was upset, and I didn't necessarily say that she was necessarily wrong for displaying her emotions in such a manner, although I did kind of wonder, you know, what was the reason for it. Now, to some extent, at least with what I knew in the past, I did not necessarily see the need to relocate the Faculty of Law, which to me that was, if I didn't even know that for certain it was a relocation. I was thinking maybe, you know, you'll have a north branch and a south branch, and to me that makes sense. But now it seems as though, at least to some extent, maybe it's, I don't know if we're locked into this, but I've got some new information that at least puts the motivation a little bit more into light and takes the debate into more specific directions with regards to certain possibilities of how did we reach the point where our nation's premier tertiary education is basically going to have the Prime Minister shout at them or scold them. You know, your perception is what it is. And to speak on that, as I mentioned before, we have the good lady herself, who just happened to be both a student and a lecturer at said facilities. Karen Eshishera, good morning.
Good morning, Sean. Yes. So we had animated, I'm going to use a euphemism. We had an animated discussion yesterday, which was unusual for both of us. But
we've had animated discussions
before? But for a long time we had not had one.
Well, okay, yes.
Yes, we had not had one.
I mean, it's not the most animated we've ever had.
No, that's true. But in any event, what Sean said is true in the sense that I bring, I guess, a personal interest in it from two perspectives, being that of a former student of the Faculty of Law, which was located only in Barbados, Cayville campus.
At the time?
And yes, until 2014. I'm going to explain it so that people have an understanding, because even in speaking to Sean yesterday, I think I needed to clarify the rules. So let me just say the first part of it is my own personal interest in it as having been a student of the Faculty of Law, which was located only in Barbados. It was their flagship faculty as all the various campuses, Mona in Jamaica, Trinidad with St. Augustine, and Cayville with Barbados with Cayville campus. Each one had what you'd call a flagship faculty. So in any event, I did that, and then after that, I went to law school, Hewarding Law School, located in Trinidad, a regional institution, and also, of course, I then taught at the Faculty of Law in Barbados as a senior lecturer for 4 years, from 2010 to 2014. And it was in 2014 that the full-fledged Faculty of Law in St. Augustine was established, because until then, they did not have the 3 years. They had not done 3 years. So it was in 2014 that they were able to establish a full-fledged Faculty of Law, as Mona in Jamaica did on their campus. So to clarify the situation a little more, is that the legal education program that we have established by the Council of Legal Education, University of the West Indies, comprises two parts. The degree part, which is the LLB, which is part of the university, one of the faculties of the University of the West Indies, and the LEC, the Legal Education Certificate, which is the practitioner's part of the program, which then allows you to practice as an attorney at law. We have two law schools, three actually, Hewarding Law School in Trinidad, the Norman Manley Law School in Jamaica, and in Bahamas, the Eugene DePuge Law School. So in terms of employment, so just to get that clear, the LLB degree, the Bachelor of Law degree, the employer and the entity that has responsibility for that is the University of the West Indies Council. When it comes to the law school, where you do the legal education, it's the employer is the Council of Legal Education. Two separate employers, but the administrative and HR matters are handled paying a fee by the administration of the UE. So there's a relationship, definitely, and it's part of a program. And certainly you do not have to go on to law school, but why wouldn't you? So that sets the reason why I have a particular interest in it. And I probably have a better knowledge of the goings-on behind the scene, but some of which I would not be free to disclose. But I do understand the Prime Minister's, it wasn't just, she was enraged, actually. I've used that word. She said, do not test me.
Yeah.
She said, if I have to take away, the government has to take away the university from the university, just to take campus, the faculty of law from that particular faculty of law from the University of the West Indies. Oh, I think she meant the whole thing, but anyway, she did say she will do it. And if it's the last thing she does, so words to that effect, she is going to establish a faculty of law at DB campus in South. If it's the last thing that she does in her thing, she was very, 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 she was enraged and she was passionate. And one has to understand some of the anger that she showed, which is unlike her really. She tends to be self-contained and maintain her image and so on, but I think she was
especially now with the new, post-election, she seemed to be a lot more, you know, diplomatic and careful, and this was very abrupt.
Right, and her face and everything showed it. So let me give it a little context so people will understand perhaps why she may have felt so strongly about it. When the UNC administration or People's Partnership was in office between 2010 to 2015, one of the things that was near and dear to her heart was establishing the Faculty of Law at the DB campus in South. And she went, the administration went apace in establishing that. And of course, that caused a lot of rumblings at St. Augustine, because now the full faculty was now established at St. Augustine. So I think in 2017, when the announcement was made that the faculty was going to be relocated to Derby, there was a lot of protest by a cohort of about 100 students. And this is what Belle Antoine, who was now the dean, she was then the dean of the Faculty of Law, the first dean of the Faculty of Law, this is what she had to say to these students' protests. She said, as you're well aware, our current faculty housing situation is drastically inadequate and cannot continue, in my view, under any circumstances. Neither students nor staff have adequate facilities, and there are increasingly serious occupational health and safety issues, worsening IT facilities, lack of office and classroom space at our present location. This is becoming worse as our staff and student population increase. That is what Belle Antoine had to say to the students. And by the way, the students, she did say, yes, we listen to the students, but you can't have the tail wagging the dog. You can't have a cohort of students who do not want to go down south. But essentially, that's what it was. That is what it was. That is what it was about. They didn't feel that they had to go through the expense, the traveling expense, the inconvenience, the probably relocating, living in the south during the weekday period. All of those things that students from the south and central Trinidad experienced for over how many years since the faculty was established? Because let me be clear, every campus, as my understanding, had a flagship. Mona had medicine, Barbados had law, and Trinidad had two. Trinidad had engineering and agriculture. And in fact, when it comes to agriculture, it was the forerunner, what they call it, I wrote it on the Imperial College of Tropical Agriculture, which was established in 1921, was the forerunner of the St. Augustine campus in Trinidad, right? So we had two flagships. So the idea that we can't have a flagship in the Derby campus, why not? Every campus had one, why can't Derby have one? Okay, so that's one argument. And the second argument, which I guess myself and Sean had that little disagreement about, was that why are you complaining about going down to south? You know, I'm a child of the south. I know most of my years I spent in the north, but my formative years were in deep south. And I understand that discrimination because I experienced it even going to school, convent San Fernando for my first few years. I understood it very well. Nobody went past the lighthouse. Ask them to go Icacos, they don't even know where that is. And that is the truth. That is the truth. That is how it was then anyhow. So there is a feeling that, you know, everything must happen in the north. And the outcry of the students, I mean, I have a problem with that because what did you do before 2014? You had to pay airfare to go to Barbados. The exchange rate is not in our favor. You had to pay for accommodation. You had to pay for all the electricity rates. You had to pay for food. You had to pay for all the costs of transportation. I had to pay it, and it was much easier in my time, much less for so if you had to pay that for years, and you did that for years until 2014, until a faculty was established here, what's the issue about going south in your own country? I don't understand it at all. And the other thing, too, is that, so I said there are three flagships already established in all the campuses. The other thing too is the law program, as I indicated already. Let me just finish with Belle Antoine, because you see, when you saw the Prime Minister respond like that, there was an address by Professor Belle Antoine at Law Faculty Lounge. This is what she said. So I'm going to the part where she started waxing poetic about going to DB. So this is what she said. Let me get it. So you have to understand the anger that embracing our new home. That's on page 7 of her address. A great legal brain flourishes anywhere. Hear that? I hope you're hearing it. Now she's the principal, right? As you know, a key component of the transition to an independent faculty is the relocation of the faculty to high-quality physical premises in a newly built South Campus of the University of West Indian DB. Last Friday, we visited our lovely new home, nestling in DB. You heard that? Right, you heard what she said. Personally, as a nature lover, I see great benefit in the new Faculty of Law being located in a rural area. It maximizes space in a peaceful environment, conducive to study and reflection. We should not forget that the great universities that we emulate, such as Oxford and Cambridge, started off in little-known rural villages, not in cities. Frankly, I believe a good mind, a good legal mind, will flourish anywhere, in town, in Toko, or in Debi. I only ask that we be given the necessary facilities for the campus. So you see, that's what you call a vote fast now, meaning an about face that I believe, in my respectful opinion, but I think I know both persons not very, very well, but I know them enough. And certainly I know Belle Antoine because when I was at the Faculty of Law in Barbados, she was a member of staff there. She was not the dean, but she was a member of staff there. So I have an indication. And I will say that the headlines, when I read the headlines and even the way in which the matter initially ruled out, it would seem to be very dismissive of the Prime Minister. She well knew that relocating the Faculty of Law, whatever the reasons the Prime Minister may have had, she well knew that was something near and dear to her heart. In fact, just before elections, I knew people who were working on the program, on the project, and I told someone, I wouldn't call the name, and I said to him, I said, let me tell you something. If the PNM wins this election, I'll bet you my last dollar that one of the first things they are going to bring to a screeching end is that move to DB. So said, so done.
This is back in 2015.
Yes, I told the person, I said the elections were due around that time. And I told them that. I said there is no way a PNM administration is going to allow Kamala Prasad Bissessa, who was the inspiration, the mind behind it, who had a great attachment to it in many ways.
Yes, you could tell by her emotions.
Right, that they were going to allow that to happen. And so said, so done.
The headlines that you were referring to Belle Antoine, I just wanted you to clarify for the public with regards to what Professor Belle Antoine said. I believe it was recently. You were talking about the fact that, speaking about the Global School of Medicine, it was almost like if UE was ignoring the Prime Minister outright.
This is the tone. The tone is everything, you know. Tone is everything. I always used to tell my students, when you write something or when you say something, you put it on a paper, you have to look at tone. And the tone to me was, it's a done deal. I mean, what are you talking about? We're going down there, she said. The applications have been sent out. She said classes are ready to start in August. Now, how could you take that public position when you very well knew how much the Prime Minister felt about that? So let me just say one more thing in terms of why.
I just want to add to the tone.
Yeah.
For those that might not necessarily fully follow what Karen just said, in the social media generation, when you're going to post something, right? And maybe it's a little bit contentious, and you know it's a little bit contentious, to what Karen said, it's best to reread it, to see what the tone is before you press send. Because once you put communication out there, once we put that messaging out there, what is said and what is not said, and how it is said, it's part of the public record, and it is what it is. And that is one of the areas that I do agree with you, but I'll expand later. You can continue.
Okay. So the whole tone and the whole tenor, and I found it had a tone of dismissiveness, actually, and saying, well, you know, I don't know what you're talking about. Essentially, that's how it came across. I don't know what you're talking about, you know. We are ready to roll out the Global School of Medicine, which I think is an excellent idea, right? So I wanted to reference the former university I think he dealt with it very, very well. I loved how he expressed it. Until he said both can coexist. And what he is saying is true. I mean, I was at both at the faculty level university. University depends on the regional heads of government to contribute to the campus, and that has always been an issue. Maybe the things have changed now, clearly, with some jurisdictions, but that has always been a challenge. So they have never been able, and he said it, Copeland said it. He said, we have always been struggling to keep our head above water. We are in debt. So the idea behind the Global School of Medicine is about having something like, I say, George's University, and we are well positioned for that. Because one thing in medicine, we are well respected internationally. So I see that as a win-win situation, and I do think that when the Prime Minister said San Fernando, we have a San Fernando teaching school, what they said, and it makes sense, you know, it's like you have the LLB, you have the LLB, and you have the LAC. The LLB is the academic, the LAC is supposed to be the practical.
So the Global School of Medicine will be the academic.
Right, so you do the theory, clinical, is the clinical, that and another hospital. And it's already established, so you don't even know. And then
might be CUVA, not
I think it's CUVA. Yeah. So there you have it already established. They also have a lot of interest in it. It's going to upgrade the international image of Trinidad and Tobago, much needed foreign exchange. What they're saying is really to pay the bills of UE, because UE is starved for funds.
But also, UE will earn foreign exchange.
That's
a lot of that will be translated to TT dollars to pay its local bills, and the country will get the foreign exchange. So it's not just UE. It will also benefit the country.
Yes, but UE is important. That's your tertiary
education.
Yes. That is where your people get their level of education to take the country forward.
You're taking an education that was built primarily to educate our own population, and now you're also...
It's like a St. George's.
You're making it, you're expanding it. This is, in a way, diversification, because now you're going outside of local education to foreign education, and the whole host of possibilities that will allow, although I don't know if we'll have time to get to this. Tobago has said...
Well, I was about to say this.
Right, okay.
Let me just say that. I want to make it clear.
Yes, because you brought this up. You reminded me of this.
Okay, I just want to make this clear. They are not replacing the University School of Medicine. You know, they're not doing that. Barbados has a School of Medicine. Jamaica has a MONA. It's the most, I think, the most established and most respected, I have to say that. But what they're doing is doing a St. George's University, what a lot of other Caribbean islands are doing. They're catering to the foreign student, and they are going to give first-class education, because we are recognized as a first-class institution and in medicine. So it is not competing with the School of Medicine. They said that if students from Trinidad want to come there, well, they can, but they have to pay the cost of coming to the school. But the idea,
it'll be in the US, it'll be catered to a foreign market.
Exactly, and it is a way for us to earn and help the university to pay its bills, because in effect, it gets its subventions from the government. So if the government doesn't have that pressure, it's a win-win situation for everybody. And Professor Copeland said medicine law could coexist at the DB campus, and he explained the thing. He said the long-term goal. Anyway, I'm not going to go through it, but I mean, he explained how it would have worked out, and it was true that they were nearly completed with that. So I understand really, the last point I was going to make about why DB wasn't an issue is that you're going against the traffic. You know, one of the things people will say, my God, the traffic going south. But when you're going down in the morning, you're going against, because everybody coming into north. And when you're going in the afternoon, you are going against the traffic, essentially, because everyone is going home. So on every level, I do support the Prime Minister with, then there are always going to be pluses and negatives to anything that one does. But the principal herself, when she was dean, was waxing poetic about going to Zebe, and was saying all the terrible things about why we couldn't continue with senior custody. It just didn't have the space. And that is one of the reasons why the Faculty of Law in Barbados became, you could not continue. That was built for 60 students. When I was teaching, there was 100 and something students coming from all over the Caribbean at extreme cost. People from Belize had to take a trip, had to go some other country before they could come to Barbados. People from Jamaica with their exchange rate. I mean, students were really, really under pressure. So there are a lot of reasons why each campus decided to establish their own faculty so they could have many more persons graduating in law, and the facilities at the Faculty of Law and Cable simply is a standalone, it was a standalone faculty. It simply had outgrown its ability to accommodate all these students. And you know, this new facility has a moot court, which if you are training as a lawyer, that's important, the advocacy component of the training. So on every level, it's a done deal already. I think I agree with Professor Copeland, the former principal, that they both can coexist. It's a win-win for everyone. And I do think that the way in which it was initially handled was not good. It was, I can imagine very well, having said what I did say, that that probably enraged the Prime Minister. And I do think that the principal, Belle-Antoine, who represents the university, so when they don't call a name and say it's she that they're speaking to, it's she that they're speaking to, because she is the face of the institute and she is the principal. So it's unfortunate that it was handled like that, and it became a tete-a-tete and embroiled into imbroglio, or Trump would say a kerfuffle.
So my whole thing was, and there's some key things that you told me that I was not aware of, because generally, at least on the outside looking in, it was a case of, well, why are we relocating a faculty just to another location? Because in my mind, it was not about, oh, what, you know, who's disadvantaged. It's just, you'll kind of have similar enough problems, right? If you just have one. That's why I was like, well, if we had two, this makes sense to me. Now you have a direct access for students in the north, students in the south. But the key thing about relocation, because I didn't necessarily care for relocation, to me it's just spending money for no overall gain in the wider society. Except when you told me, well, the faculty's physical location and the facilities offered where it is now apparently is not good enough, so much so that the current principal spoke on it. And that's the key point, because I wouldn't necessarily read into too much about, for me, the tone of the message is not just, you know, well, they kind of ignore the Prime Minister. What's more important is you are on public record of saying, let's go DB. And now you're on public record saying, no, Faculty of Law not going DB. Where's the explanation to bridge those two positions that you had? And that's the key point. If you had that and the Prime Minister went off on a rant, that's one thing. But you don't have that, so the Prime Minister doesn't look like she's ranting. The Prime Minister looks legitimately pissed off and justifiably annoyed, right? To say the least, on the second one. So now we've reached the point where one of the other things that I wonder, if it is to get better facilities, it makes sense, right? Because I don't know if they have the available space in St. Augustine. I would imagine the answer to that is no, right? So you go to somewhere new, and it is what it is, right? You still have the transportation challenges, but the point is that that was going to be there regardless, so you had to solve that anyway. But the other thing is, you have a blank slate, essentially, where you could start from scratch, where you could add more to it. My one other issue is this. It was reported at 2017 that it was incomplete and the contractor failed to meet whatever specifications or requirements that it had to, and UE took it over. With regards to the immediate term plans of the Prime Minister, right, and I understand what the professor said, the former principal. I don't know what is the level of completeness of the facilities for the Faculty of Law right now, because I wonder if UE pivoted and physically made it into more practical for medical school, and I don't know, part of it, I honestly don't know, because I could look at what was the proposals, but I don't know if that's what was the actual finished product. For the actual physical size to fit both, I do believe in the long run that it is a good idea, because potentially you could even look at the South Campus being an international campus, not just for a global school of medicine, but it could be like the main faculty for international, you know, tertiary tourism product, and the law faculty could be part of it. That's what I was about
to say. Right. Sorry, because I wanted to respond to some of the things that you said, but also what makes it even more very attractive, that is the Global School of Medicine. As I remembered, I had done some interviews with James Vanus James, who's an economist, and he said one of the reasons he came back to Tobago to help to develop and to contribute to Tobago was he was very, very strong on medical tourism. Right. So there is a synergy between, want of a better word, between that, because what it would encourage is what's happening at St. George's University. My daughter went there, and I can tell that it is, and the test of whether university is giving you a high quality, you all have to do the exam for the state, whatever state, you know, there's an exam. So whatever school you're qualified from, at the end of the day, everybody has to do the exam that is set by the state or by
the nation.
Yes, No, in the United States, because it's a U.S.
The U.S. boards.
Yes, U.S. board, because it's a U.S. school.
Yes.
It's physically in
Grenada,
but you have to do U.S. boards, and they got extremely good results. So they have established themselves, and it encouraged a sort of tourism. They encourage tourism because the parents and a lot of these children who come from the, we had a scholarship program at the time, but a lot of American students came from wealthy families, a lot of them, and their family would come here, go sailing and so on. So there's a spill-off effect from that, which will help to develop your tourism culture and product, and also develop Vanus James' idea of a medical tourism, which he was very invested in.
My only thing is, I believe he wanted it for Tobago.
Yeah, it's Tobago I'm talking about for that.
But you know, if you put it in Debe, it won't.
No, it's not for Tobago. It is that if you establish, you put Trinidad on the map again, and you put it on the map, and then if you want to market it well, then you let Tobago market that, and then you have the facilities of people coming for, you know, people who are recovering from something, recovering or that type of. Well, that's just a byproduct. But I just wanted to say that in relation to where they had reached with the faculty, as far as I knew, they had reached about 80 to 90% with the faculty of law when they decided that the contractor had to be, was not pulling his weight. So if you could have reached that far, we talked about it, abandoning projects, because there are some facilities that are associated with a faculty of law that are not to another area of study, and that is the moot court. They have a moot court. When you go to a faculty in Barbados, you go in their library. Their library is absolutely huge. It's one of the most renowned libraries, law libraries in the region, and I'm sure more than that. So you have to understand it's a specialist library. It is a specialist facility, and from what they showed, the moot court was completed, the student facilities, the student union was completed. There were some things, and it's 100 acres. It's not 5 acres, it's 100 acres. So it can incorporate other facilities, which is why Copeland says, and he said the reason for the Global School of Medicine, when they did the research and looked at where they had reached, they said the report said, in addition to significantly improve and expanding access to students, the facility will also enable the UWI in Augustine to improve its ability to earn income, and it's hoped that the Southern campus will be fully self-financing when completed and fully occupied. So they want to make it a flagship faculty. And why can't you have a flagship faculty, but catering for the foreign student and the law faculty? Why not? Why should all three flagships be located in St. Augustine? You know, I think the reasoning is that, and they spend the money. They've already spent the money.
I didn't know, one of the things I speculated on, I didn't know if the lecturers didn't want to move, if the faculty itself, the people didn't want to move, I don't know to what extent it is the principals.
People like change, you know.
Of course, if it's the principal's agenda, or if, you know, how much did the rest of UWI buy into that, or how much of it did they agree with it on their own. But at the end of the day, if the facilities would be better in Debe, then that gives weight to saying, let's relocate to the Debe. And I started off...
You should see the facilities in St. Augustine, because I went there and applied. Applied to teach there. My application was not even acknowledged, but that's a different story. But I'm just saying, I'm not going to go into it, but I'm just saying I went there. I went to the camp. Oh my God, it reminded me of when I was a student there. It reminded, in terms of the facilities, it reminded me a lot, the building. You go upstairs, the secretary's office, the principal's office, the teacher has it now. And also, I'm pretty certain they do not have a library. They could correct me, because what we had to do, there's a main library, and there would be a floor with law books, but not any kind of level that you saw at Keyville. So I don't know what the situation is, so I cannot speak for now.
One of the other things is potentially, again, the Faculty of Law could also at some point accept foreign students. You could add more. You say you have the flagship on the Global School of Medicine to kind of center the foreign student aspects of it around, but it doesn't have to be limited to that. So, and locating the Faculty of Law, the point is locating it now next to the Global School of Medicine will allow that easier transition. And if for whatever reason they want to further their education in Hewarding, that's fine, they could do that after, right? Yeah.
Because what the faculty offers, for example, at Barbados, I know that they have master's programs offered at the UE St. Augustine. But at one time, if you wanted to do legal drafting, everybody wanted to do, you had to do a master's program, you went to Barbados. So we do have a lot, from my understanding, there are a lot of master's programs. So it's not just the degree, the LLB, because remember that's the academic route, or what is the right pronunciation. So you can do your master's definitely, and then you could probably go on to your PhD. I don't know if they have any PhD candidates. Yes, actually I did do a PhD candidate in Barbados. There was one there that I had to, I did it with someone else to supervise that program. So I think that we should take down the temperature. She's the Prime Minister, and all the arguments, I mean, even the current principal will find herself hard-pressed to explain how she did that vote fast, you know, turn around and have a different opinion.
That's the key, regardless of if you agree with the Prime Minister's stance or not, and her tone or not. The point is that we kind of need to explain, well, how is it you was gung-ho, and then things change all of a sudden, but listen, I'm not even saying that there isn't an explanation for it. I'm just saying, you gotta give us something. Otherwise, what are we supposed to think, right? And yes, it's easy, the low-hanging fruit, and I'm trying to remember if I did, but I don't think I admonished the Prime Minister for taking such a strong stance, right? Although to some extent, I do wish she didn't. I do wish that she didn't.
Yes, I agree with that.
But given what you told me now, it's more understandable.
But she shouldn't have, though. She shouldn't have.
Yes, because
she should have told us that in private.
That's the thing.
But you know what? The principal didn't say what she had to say in private either.
Well, you see, to the public, they don't realize what UE was giving out was also a directed message, not just a general public statement. You understand?
Yeah.
So I did wonder why couldn't it have been dealt with behind closed doors, because it gives her political opponents a little bit of cannon fodder, depending on how much more is revealed and how much more can be proven to the public so that they get a better context. But I understand. I agree with the Professor Emeritus. Sorry?
Professor Copeland.
Copeland. I don't know why. I keep thinking Harewood.
He's the man with the steel band.
Yes. So I do agree with him. You could have both, because I hope that the Global School of Medicine concept is not abandoned.
Yes, I agree.
Right? Mm-hmm. I'm just concerned about if the facilities could, in the immediate to short term, fit both, and to what extent is more investment needed. And I would say the investment would be a worthwhile endeavor. It's just we have an issue with revenue right now with available funds, and that's what's potentially going to hold us back. So,
but if you're spending to make,
well, that's the thing, right?
So, you know, not to decry anything.
True.
Of course, you have to spend in health, and you have to spend in social programs and education. Yes, you do have to spend, and you will get a payback, but not so tangibly. So if you're going to spend in those programs, specifically that one for the foreign students, then you see the spend coming back with a return fairly quickly.
Even if UE breaks even on it, and I think we said this on the refinery, right? Even if they break even, the fact is you're breaking even, but you're still getting foreign exchange to come in.
Yeah.
And that
employment too.
That's also
effect.
And also, I mentioned it yesterday. I did mention it yesterday. DB is looking at that campus as new opportunities for their economy, because services will have to be provided to whoever goes there, right? And I do believe decentralization in general is a good idea.
Oh, you do?
Right? Yes, in general. That's why I thought, having satellites, and I said this about health, right? I don't think we should have singular specialist hospitals in TNT, at least not until the traffic situation and transportation system is unimproved. Because could you imagine if we only had one pediatric center and you have an emergency with your child and you somewhere in a far corner of the country? Oh, well, there you go, right? So in that sense, for medicine, because there's emergencies, I'm like, we should spread it out. For education, it's not that clear-cut, right? And trying to spread things out, okay, I don't know if you could have more than one facility, one in North, one in South. If you could, to me, that would be ideal.
What's you talking about, for law?
For everything,
no, I don't
to
think
be honest.
You can. It's Trinidad's too small.
It's too small?
Trinidad's too small,
Well,
and then Trinidad's too small, and they have all the administrative considerations.
Of having so two separate?
Yes, and the student cohort per year would be about 100 and something. It'll just be, I mean, unless you said what the first aid.
I mean,
and you're going to get to law school anyhow, and you're going to be in St. Augustine, right back home.
Somebody brought it up, you know, UB Roy Tech, they have a facility in Port of Spain, they also do classes.
Right.
But, so that's what I was thinking,
okay.
Right? Like, but I mean, again, that goes into a realm, and I believe I tried to say this yesterday, where you're going into the details, and the conversation has not necessarily drilled down.
It's too expensive, you know, because what you'd have, suppose you're teaching equitable remedies, is the first year and second year at university is a standard curriculum, and then you go into the final year and it's, you can choose.
Then it gets, right.
Yeah, you have electives. But what I'm saying is, if you took that approach, then you'd have to hire double the staff, and that's where major costs are.
Well, I think part of it is, with other examples, some courses are done in North, some courses are done in South.
Yeah, but then you have to then you have to have the facility available, and it has to be equal in thing. I mean, where's the library? Where's the moot court? It's double expense, and you're already under the water with expenses.
I think, and that's why the facilities part is so important, because the implication is, well, DB will kind of become the default,
the flagship
anyway, because a lot of the important facilities might potentially be there and not in St. Augustine. So then, you know,
I mean, to be honest,
you might as well just move it at that point.
Right. So, to be honest with you, I live in North now, you know, and have lived here for quite a while, and I think it would have been hard to think of having to go down, go to school. I think the concept would have been a difficult one to wrap my mind around.
But I will say this, and I didn't think this way yesterday, right? It's one of those things where, look, it's hard because our transportation network is so deficient, and we're jammed up on the western side and to the north more than to the south. And if we decentralize things more, there will be a certain amount of dividends where not everybody is trying to go in the same direction at the same time. And to some extent, yes, going south is against the traffic, but not always is it that easy, right? So if we decentralize, it would ease up the transportation system in general, depending on how you do it.
And I think what would happen too is that if you're a lecturer, you live there, you live in the south, so there's a, you know, and lecturer salaries, I mean, at the faculty are not that bad, you know, when you look at all the benefits that go with being a lecturer. So, and you work for it. I mean, you have to be qualified to do it.
I did say this, South is not a bad place for people in Port of Spain to go visit and enjoy,
That's
right?
true.
So it's not like it's that far. You know, it's not like you can't see your family ever again.
You know what is the irony? The irony is that people who live in South see nothing about coming up to North to go to everything. They think, you know, because their life is so...
No, but the thing is, I have made the drive within the last few months to a year, and multiple times. And if it wasn't for the road works, I'd be like, this drive is because part of it is, you know, there's no traffic light and it's going straight down from Port of Spain all the way down now, right? Yeah. So it's like, this is not that big of a deal.
Yeah, but get into San Fernando, you get taught, well, I mean, for me, even though I went to school in San Fernando for 3 years, I mean, those hills.
I used to be able to navigate San Fernando better fast.
No entrance.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, sorry, huh? I mean, I love South people. I love South people, and I have an affinity to South, which comes from my formative years. But my goodness gracious me, it is a challenge. All I remember is the library in High Street.
To be fair,
and I'm showing my age, Woolworth.
to be fair, when you see people driving and it looks like they don't know where they're going. You're like, well, they don't live in Port of Spain. Right?
You mean they don't live in San Fernando?
Well, no. When you're here, right?
Right?
Like the roundabout by Queen's Hall, right? And sometimes people kind of do some crazy things, and it's like you obviously you don't know what this roundabout is.
Right.
One would hope that you would know how to drive around the roundabout.
Who was the person behind that was Pandey, you know. Before going around that, they call it the largest roundabout in the the whole of the Savannah was the largest, but that roundabout idea was Mr. Prime Minister Basil Pandey,
right?
May God rest his soul,
yeah.
Because he is the one said one-way traffic, and he put the roundabout there, and that is why it eased up a lot of the traffic congestion.
Yes, roundabout makes a big difference compared to traffic lights. This is, once it's implemented well. They have some issues with where some roundabouts are placed, but it is what it is.
Sharon Inglefield, who is the one against the scrapping the demerit points, she has been a great advocate for the roundabouts.
Yeah.
In fact, the one that they have in, I don't think I'm wrong to say this, the one in Westmoreland, which replaced the traffic lights, I know she was, I believe that she was very much instrumental in it, and she had her personal reasons, I think, for more than
I think it's a net positive.
Huh?
I think it is a net positive.
And Barbados is just roundabouts after roundabouts.
My only thing is when you have these roundabouts on certain major roads that are kind of like pseudo highways, drivers need to not be typical reckless drivers. And
in Trinidad,
yeah.
In Trinidad, because I just want to say one thing when you're talking about that.
No, also in Tobago. There's one in Tobago where...
Okay, I just want to, because I lived in Barbados for 4 years, and I didn't drive when I was there. So I got to see the way that persons who live there obey the traffic laws. And one thing that absolutely struck me is when you have those pedestrian crossings, they would see a pedestrian crossing and they would start slowing down. Trinidad, they go through that and the pedestrian better look out and make sure it's clear. We do not respect the pedestrian crossings. And I think that is something that struck me about Barbados, and also the use of roundabouts on their highways.
In the past, I found Tobago was a lot more disciplined with how they utilize their turning lanes and their straight lanes.
Maybe too many Trinidadians living there now.
And they're not, now, granted, there was a certain type of aggressive driving by Tobagonians that they knew what they were doing, but it always freaked me out. But you know what I mean? But now I find that there was a level of courtesy and discipline in how they manage their traffic flow that's not quite there anymore. You might be right. It could be to some extent that, at some point enough Trini drivers influenced and brought the bad influence to Tobago, or young Tobagonian drivers did not necessarily learn from past generations.
I just want to mention, but not to discuss it today, because I would like to see the stand your ground legislation. I see that the Attorney General mentioned that it would be coming in very soon.
Yeah.
And until that happens, I think I would want to see what the legislation looks like, and we'll hopefully have a discussion on on the implications of that.
There's a lot of implications with regards to that, because
we have to see what the legislation, how far it goes. Is it going to be a Trayvon Martin type of legislation?
Is it going to be limited to your house, or is it going to be outside of that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Is it going to be that you could shoot first and then ask questions after, because you just feel intimidated?
Because local laws, you have a duty of care even to people trespassing on your property, from what I understand, right? This is my little bit of business law education, right? Right? Speaking about law in front of, one of the authors of law books, right? So, but I think that's one of the things that, because one of the reasons why I believe, in business school, when they want to tell you that, is because people are amazed. It's like, oh, they're trespassing, and you technically are responsible in certain ways for them.
Somebody comes 1 o'clock in the morning breaking down your window, I don't think you have to worry about why they're there. They're not coming to have dinner with you, are they?
No.
So I think it would be reasonable to assume, since they didn't call, didn't phone, didn't ring the bell, and broke in a window and so on, that you have reasonable grounds to believe, and they didn't shout out, "Mommy, it's me, I come home," or something like that. You have reasons to believe it is more than a trespasser. It is a criminal, a robber. And that's why I want to have that discussion, because I think we have to be careful about who we brand or who we do not brand criminals, because that's the danger with that stand your ground. Because every time you read, one can only surmise that who are the criminals. Is it the person who shot the gun, shot the the person, the deceased, or are they all three? Are there three criminals involved? The person who was killed, the person who shot the gun, and the person who gave the orders for the gun to be shot. So are there three criminals, and are you then protecting criminals? And that's my concern.
I hate to say this, but I think given the climate of our crime situation, I suspect, I could be wrong, but I suspect the government and the wider criminal justice system will err on the side of supporting the
business community.
The business community, the homeowner, whatever, and not whoever is the trespasser. Because there could very well be situations where utilizing a gun in those situations is an over-escalation. It's not necessarily called for. But because of the level of violence in the nation, I think
but that's the problem, you know.
Yeah, I know,
Sean,
right?
That's the problem, Sean.
I don't agree with it. I could see where nobody wants to take any chances, so we'll shoot first, ask questions later.
That's not even what I'm saying.
Right.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, how do we define a criminal? How do we define a criminal? Because the idea is that you are an innocent person, minding your own business, living a good life, being a respectable citizen of Trinidad and Tobago, and somebody breaks in your house and executes you, shoots you in your head, right? And that person who you've just shot owns a fancy car, owns a fancy house, and you can't understand how they live in when they only their job. I think.
Okay, we'll take the call on WhatsApp.
So we'll take the call, but that's the concern.
Caller, good morning.
Good morning, Sean and Karen.
Morning.
And I have to just comment on something that Karen more so Karen said a while ago about what she saw and witnessed in Barbados as it pertains to the crosswalks and the discipline that she witnessed in Barbados. And I wanted to connect that to this. I'm seeing a lot of people locally here making a big thing about keep the merit points, keep the merit points. And I listen to some people, and I'm wondering if these people don't realize that we already had laws or still have laws, right? Road safety laws, etc., speeding, and all these things. They're acting as if by moving the demerit point system, all hell is going to break loose. So why? We always had laws. And again, Sean, people don't seem to understand this simple fact. Most of the, I shouldn't say most, a lot of the problems in Trinidad and Tobago is that we never enforce laws consistently and effectively. And I keep saying that. We had a situation where speed guns were introduced, and there was a big uproar by people about, and I looked at it and I said to people, do you realize that the uproar from all these people tells you that these people didn't even know what the speed limit was and everybody was breaking the speed limit? Because why would you have an uproar because they get speed guns? You understand? And we don't seem to understand these simple things. When I hear people talking about, oh, it's a big deal. No, our problem has been and still is, we don't enforce law. And then there's this next habit of people saying, well, those laws are archaic. And no, Sean, if you have an old car, like an Escort, for instance, and you have been running that Escort up and down, and you're still driving it, and it still drives brand new like now, you know what would have happened for you to have kept that Escort maintained? You would have had to make changes to the improvements, change the engine, and all that. We have laws that we never use the laws, and now we just sit back and say, oh, the laws are old. We never use them in the first place. And that is our problem. That is the same thing where I keep trying to tell you when noise pollution is concerned. You can't have an officer come in there and saying, oh, there's no law to stop a back on playing law. No, there is. We never used it. And if we were using it since in the 60s to now, we would have already made the necessary changes, right?
Yeah.
To compete with you know, and that's my point.
Caller, thank you. Now, one thing, caller. Thanks. We'll talk of it. One thing, though, I think the people who want the demerit points is they're thinking to have harsh penalties in order to try to encourage people to not break road traffic violations. The critics of it, and why I agree to, why I lean more scrap it than keep it, is that it was kind of abusive for low-level violations and unnecessary. Or I made a wrong turn in a situation might not be so clear to me that I can't make that turn. I have demerit points and a ticket that's, I don't know how many hundreds, if not $1,000, right? So I could understand if they want to keep it for drunk driving and reckless driving, anything that could lead to the loss of life. And the problem for the proponents, not, I think the San Fernando Taxi Association, they made this distinction, so kudos on them. But other proponents have not, including the president, at least as far as I've read. Maybe I missed it, right? And if you're not willing to make that distinction, I think the argument to keep the demerit point system is dead in the water, because the costs are not outweighing the benefits, because we're not really seeing the benefits, because as the caller said, it's not being enforced consistently. So what's the point of having? It's like we have the death penalty in the books. 80% of murders go undetected. You know, we don't arrest anybody, if not more. So what's the point of asking for the death penalty to be reinstituted if we can't even catch them? It's not going to be a deterrent because they'll never get caught. And it's the same thing for traffic violations. The people who speeded on the highway late at night, they're the ones getting the demerit points. It's the person that kind of waiting on their friend from the ATM. They ain't even parked, but the police...
I find it sounding like a real experience there.
I didn't get it. I did not get no ticket, right? So it's not first-hand experience. We had callers calling on this, you know, with various complaints about low-level violations.
I think you made a very good point.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not just my point alone.
Okay, well,
we have a caller from Cascade. Caller, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning to Sean and to Karen.
Good morning.
Karen, it's good to see your face there and you telling us your own story, which helps to distill the challenges that confront us as a society. But I believe the issue of government coming to office and condemning the project of the previous government is one thing you could condemn. But certainly just to can the project after billions of dollars might have been spent is unacceptable. And the country has suffered dramatically over the years from this. What I think is we're really at an interesting time, because the Prime Minister has at her command the rare and distinct opportunity to introduce the kinds of laws that would put an end to this kind of wanton, as it were, disregard for taxpayers' resources. We've got to, as it were, I'm hoping that Kamla Prasad Bissessa and John Jeremy and Wade Mark and the entire group of them understand that they have been given a mandate that is rare. And therefore they must use this opportunity to bring to the Parliament and to give life the laws that will say, listen, if you want to close down a project like the DB campus or the Children's Couva Hospital, you have to have a commission of inquiry on it. You have to have a referendum. Let the people vote on it. Do we or do we not continue with the DB campus because you want to close it down when you come to office? And so I'm saying to you that this is a time when we could jump the curve. We could make a quantum leap from the foolishness that has lived in Trinidad and Tobago's politics and economic life for the last 6 decades. Let's change that. Kamla Prasad Bissessa, I want to test you this morning. I want you to bring the laws to the Parliament that will protect we the people from this wanton waste that has gone on. You can't, if a project is well thought out by a government, it should get life in the next government, regardless of whether it's the same party or not the same party. We want laws of continuity. We want laws that says to people, listen, you can't just mash up a plan because it will make the government, outgoing government, look good. That is a nonsense. And under Keith Rowley and the PNM and Stuart Young and Camille Robinson Regis and Foster Cummins and the long list of them, we have had too much of that. And we must bring an end to it. And I'm saying to you, I'm happy this thing has come up because it gives the Prime Minister an excellent opportunity to introduce laws that will protect the citizens from this kind of, because that project should have been 9 years advanced at this time. Think about if it was well marketed and sold throughout the diaspora. People would have left the United States and come to Trinidad to do their thing because it meant that they would be saving a lot of money. It is 7-1. Think about it. People in Jamaica would have come down here. People in Guyana. And the reality is that Trinidad has missed the boat on too many occasions because we have politicians who are too small-minded and are not able to say, listen, this is a good project. How can we enhance it? How Trinidad's government motto should be, how can we do better now what we are doing well? If we are doing something well, how can we do it better? Certainly they don't do that with Carnival. They don't do that with anything. I am convinced that nothing is going on where anybody sits back and says, how can we do better what we are doing good now? Well, maybe it's because we're not doing anything good.
All right.
I think there's a level of...
thank you, caller.
Yes, thank you. Because I think in the public space, there's far more discussion about that issue. I saw in today's papers, they're talking about the San Fernando project, the wharf project.
Yes.
And the idea, there was a very good article, and really saying what is happening with it. Has it been, you know, and the Prime Minister saying, well, they are relooking at it and it's supposed to be X, Y, and Z. The point he's making is that what a lot of people have been saying, billions of dollars are spent on a project, and it's both sides of the equation, eh? Somebody...
okay, we have Sanford on the line. I assume this is to pick up the conversation with regards to DB. Good morning, caller, on here.
Good morning, Sean.
Morning.
Good morning, Karen.
Morning, Mr. San Fernando.
How are you going today?
Good, good.
Well, thanks for the clarity, more clarity, Karen, on me, because this was a discussion with Sean yesterday. But I want to talk about Mr. Richards from the THA, Sean.
Oh, okay.
Yesterday, Mr. Richards made, double down or triple down or quadruple down on his request for 5.1% of the national budget in the upcoming budget for Trinidad and Tobago. He wants Tobago to get the 5.1%, and he based it on his when the last government had the 6-6 in Tobago. When the Tobago, the THA elections, and they decided that they're going to put 15 seats based on the population size.
Yeah.
So he based it on that. So he based it on, because of that, and he said that the population in Tobago has grown now to the 5.1% of the population, roughly about 70,000. What Mr. Richards has not put into the equation, so only Tobago population, Grand Trinidad population didn't grow there. Because if the population of Trinidad and Tobago has grown as well, then when you do the numbers, you're going to still get a lower percentage. So what Mr. Richards needs to ask his government for, is that we do another, because we haven't done a census in Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah.
And based on the census, we can actually have a better understanding of the population sizes, and then a better argument. Because they don't, I would employ him. They don't want to lose the case in the like how they lose the case in the Privy Council with the appeal for the boat situation in February this year. Now, I would really like to see Tobago get an increase in the what do you call it?
Allocation.
Not the allocation, Karen. Not the regular allocation, but for the development budget. Because Tobago needs some more development. Tobago needs, they have cruise ships coming there. Tobago to have a proper cruise ship terminal, to be able to take 2 or 3 cruise ships a day. Tobago needs a proper marina. There's no marina in Tobago. Every island you go to up the islands, from when you leave Trinidad and Tobago, you have marinas. We need a good marina in Tobago. So I think there is a very, very good case for an increase in the but they need to work with central government.
Development and infrastructure.
Yeah.
They really need to have an increase in the capital expenditure for infrastructure development in Tobago.
Yeah.
And I would back that 100%. And so thank you again, Karen. I hope that you put yourself out there today, so I know you and Rosemary Bell and Antoine, friend and date.
Oh, but don't mention it, don't.
You would like to hear the story. But the only thing is, in law, I just say this. In law, if I say something which happens to be true, it's called a defense of justification. And I can assure you, were I to speak about it, I have a good defense of justification in the event that this is challenged. Because if I were to tell the story, you would understand. You'd understand a little better. But you see, that's the thing. When you've had just give me show, we don't talk about you. We met very much, and I stay away from being personal on the show. But I can assure you, that that my expression of what I said is grounded in some reality. That's what I would say.
Now, yes, if going back to Tobago's population percentage, if Tobago increased by 10,000 to go to about 70,000, Trinidad is estimated to have increased by about 100,000 to go to 1.5 million. When you do the math, it's 4.6%.
But is that a good enough reason to give them more people? How about more revenue? How about more potential?
Well, right, but my point is
weaning people off the THC.
So my point is the 4% allocation. I don't think it's as simple as this. But when you're 4% of the population, you know.
That is the only reason you.
But I'll say this. I agree, Mr. Sanfano. It's just how you go around doing it. Because capital expenditure to what end, right? Because you need a lot of development across the country. So there's parts of South and East Trinidad that I have been speaking more and more needs more development. The thing with Tobago, though, is you could say, well, if we develop certain projects in Tobago, we could hopefully realize more foreign exchange earnings, and it will help the economy overall, right? So it just depends on what it is you're doing. And to some extent,
and I support Tobago.
Yes.
Just to be very, very clear, I didn't say it to be Debbie Downer. I wasn't saying it to say, my God, I'm just saying what are the measurements you're going to use. And by the way, it would be good if you had someone speak to the man in the street, including myself, because I've heard people say, what do you really mean when you say autonomy? Break it down. I want you to break it down. I don't want you to use the academic intelligentsia that kind of language that, oh gosh, you know, you're speaking that kind of legal, what they say, mumbo jumbo, legalese. Break it down. What does autonomy mean to Tobago? Well, if I were to implement it, how would it be implemented? So, I think people want to understand it better.
Because here's why. Because so much of the country needs development. Yes, central government is going to have a hand in prioritizing, but Tobago is going to have a hand in saying, in determining, you know, projects in Tobago. It's one of those things where ideally they would have a good working relationship, but we know on a practical level that's not how it goes.
Cabinet? Shouldn't they have a seat in cabinet?
Potentially, yes, because
potentially
Tobago
they're part
has
of
its
Trinidad
own.
and Tobago.
No, I know that, but I say that because I don't like speaking absolutes 1 and 2. Now I'm going to explain why. Tobago has its own unique challenges that other parts of the country just don't.
Yeah, but they need to be inside that cabinet.
So to have that specific voice to kind of speak for Tobago, and I always said Parliament also needs to figure out a way to get more representation for Tobago.
Exactly.
Because challenges in Tobago are not like challenges in the different parts of the country. Not that every part of the country doesn't have its own unique challenges, but when you're separated by water and you have to go by boat or by plane to get there, things are a little bit different, right? They're just a little bit different, and that adds up to a lot in the lives of people in Tobago.
And some of the most brilliant minds have come from Tobago, not all, but
now,
some.
We have to wrap up, but I just want to get to the 2 comments that we have. So if you could put the first one up. Good morning, Karen. I must commend you for being so objective on the DB campus issue. I knew your dad, and you are truly your father's daughter.
Oh, thank you so much. That is a real compliment. Thank you so much.
And I don't know if we have time for this, but we'll just save this for when we speak about the Stand Your Ground laws and that topic. If you could put up the next Next comment. As this is mentioned, can Karen research open gate, closed gate, and padlocks gate legislation?
Okay,
I'm not entirely sure, you know,
neither
what
I.
that means.
Nobody castle
Right.
thing, but I'll look it up.
So maybe that's what it is. So I want to thank the commentators and the callers for their contribution. Yes, something needs to be done. A precedent needs to be set where you can't just abandon projects from a previous administration. Not that you should never do it, but there should be mechanisms in place so it's done with transparency and with good reason so that we can have confidence in when these things are done. And right now it seems about political expedience and not for the good of the country more often than not. Karen, thanks for joining me once again and educating me on this topic.
I just want to say, Gordon and I had a really animated conversation yesterday, and I actually got a little concerned. I said, Sean, why are you getting so upset?
I wasn't getting upset. I was just trying to point out where there were certain things I disagreed on, but
we needed a third person to tell me whether you were getting upset.
The practical facilities and the worthiness of the facilities
That's
to
true.
me,
That
and
was
I mentioned that.
Yes,
That was the
okay, I
breaking
will
point
give
for
him.
me.
I will give him this. I will give him this. Yes, I will give him this. He was very adamant, very adamant. Karen, I'm hearing all the points you're making, but you have to show me why the facilities in St. Augustine are no longer appropriate, and the facilities in Davie are more appropriate. He said, you need to show me that. I said, okay, Sean, I'm going to research it, and I'm going to get the quotation, so it just will be me saying it. It will be coming. So I thank him for that.
That to me, that was the key. That was the key point.
Really
that just
strong on that.
That just kind of puts all other things by the wayside because better facilities is just better.
Yeah.
Now, with that said, they want us to cut. So, like I said, thanks everybody. Karen, once again. Folks, this is Talking About WSN. I would just like to close by saying have a good day. Stay safe. Try your best. You know, don't take any unnecessary risks. Remember your allegiance to the Republic and to each other. And never forget, it's nice to be nice, even when you have animated discussions about contentious issues. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
WESN.
Her voice has mesmerized us for years.
And now, in a rare treat for music fans,
Shakuntala and Friends in concert, featuring Shakuntala Jang Bahadur. Singing sensation Deval Chaitlal, brilliant musician Dr. Shivanan Maharaj, master flautist and saxophonist Narendra Maharaj, with music from Shiv Sangeet Orchestra, Shakuntala and Friends in concert.
Shakuntala.
Low energy? Heart concerns? Migraines slowing you down? It's time to take control of your health. Join Wellness Unlocked, the series that brings expert advice and real solutions for a healthier you. In our latest episode, learn how Jameson CoQ10 can help support heart health, boost energy, and even reduce migraines. Get the science, the stories, and the steps to power up your health with CoQ10. Don't miss Wellness Unlocked. Watch now on WESN and start your wellness journey today.